Greetings and salutations. It's me, Robert Phoenix, and we are back for another edition of the Astro Weather. And I hope everybody is having a swimming Astro Weather day. Let me check my audio. Let's see. Yeah. See, it's good to check the audio. If you check the audio, sometimes the audio is not in the. So here's what happened. I came on and my computer was not recognizing my camera. So I had to reboot, and hence my tardy time. But thank you for being here wherever you are. Greatly appreciated as usual, as always. So before we get into sort of the meet and greet here, I just want to show you guys this poll that I did over on Twitter, and it's kind of in the. I would say I'm drafting. I'm drafting on the whole Fauci thing, which we're going to talk about over on 15 minutes today. We're really going to get into the Fauci stuff. And I put a poll up here. And I don't know if you guys follow me over on Twitter, but if you do, you can most certainly reply to this poll. So the poll is, do you think that astrologers who recommended getting the vax need to have their credibility reassessed? So as of now, we have 129 votes, and there are 12 hours left in the poll. And as of now, 89.1% say that yes, their credibility needs to be reassessed. 10.9% said no. Now, I have gone out of my way not to stick my nose in the comments, with the exception of one, which was about how North Node Dan said, I don't understand how anti-establishment people become establishment people in one post Mercury retrograde shadow period. Most spiritual communities now are leftist as fuck versus more independent. It's beyond sad. So that's the only comment that I've responded to so far, which is very weird and disappointing. Ernest Stavro Blofeld said, not as astrologers, but yes, as social commentators. Sally says that and pining for Obama. Not real part of the question, but I understand where she's coming from. And there was somebody else who came in, and I think it was basically they said that I don't, when it comes to philosophy or politics, I really don't care because that doesn't mean that they're not great astrologers. I would have to disagree with that. Now, again, I didn't say anything because I want it to be as neutral as possible. Like I don't want to sort of guide people's answers around this. But I do think that if somebody who isn't whoever they are, okay, it doesn't matter if they're an astrologer or a quote unquote new thought leader or a quote unquote healer, but you definitely saw this in the astrological community, that there were people that were advocating that people get vaccinated. Okay. Advocating people get vaccinated. And I think that, of course, nobody's always right. You can always use that maxim. But there's kind of like not being right about, hey, it's Mercury retrograde and you shouldn't sign a contract today, or right. There's a big difference between that and, hey, why don't you inject something in your veins that could be detrimental for you and other people around you? Go ahead and do that. Like, I think there's a big discrepancy between not always being right on minor matters and major matters. And I don't know. What do you think? You can leave some comments here in the text because I do think it matters. And I'll tell you why it matters too is because there were astrologers. I know of at least two others off the top of my head that were, and I don't know everybody in the astrological community because I'm kind of an outlier, but clearly David was, you know, right at the tip of the spear. I was at the tip of the spear when it came to telling people not to get vaccinated. David lost a shit ton of people from his world because of it. I didn't really lose anybody because because the people who listened to whatever I was doing, they were already in, right? It was just a reinforcement. You know, I was like I was like the good booster versus the bad booster, right? And I think maybe William Stick Evers probably was anti-vax, but other than that, I don't know. I mean, I just and it was it was it as an astrologer, I think it was a pretty lonely place to be, and I think you even had people like Stephen Forrest who was adamant that you needed to get vaccinated, right? The father of evolutionary astrology. And not only that, but then all of his other political stuff started to creep in. And Richard Rudd, who did the Gene Keys, was like pro-vaccination. I'm like, man, this is just weird, right? These are very, very well-known, very powerful people with a lot of influence, and uh, I suppose you could separate the wheat from the chaff a little bit and say, well, yeah, there's still a good astrologer, right? But could you trust them to guide you and navigate you on big macro decisions or trends? And I think maybe that's probably the better question. But personally, I would think that that they would have to have some degree of reassessment with their work, and that includes everybody. By the way, everybody who was pushing that shit needs to be completely reassessed. Now, if some people um, have copped to it and said, "Look, I was wrong," and there are people that have done that, by the way, and that's not an easy thing to do, particularly due to the fact that it's such a loaded topic, right? To say that you were wrong about something like that actually takes a lot of guts and a lot of character to be able to do that. So, and there are people who've come out and said that they were wrong, and some of them were medical professionals. So, all right, let's just go through and see who we have here today. Just a quick roll call. There he is, DJMC, KK, the California Contrarian, Catherine Rosen. Hello, Catherine. Veronica's Barn. Birds are chirping. Some beautiful songs out there on the West Coast. Brandy Herrera. Are you stuck in Bandera? Brandy Herrera. Brandy Herrera. She was stuck in Bandera. She didn't have a care in the world. Green Eyed Crow. What's happening? Vaporwave. Greetings. Hanging laundry. Hanging. Christina Jersey. Hi, Christina. Happy Tuesday it is. Rich J. Morning day of 6 liver flesh. You go, Rich. Robert, you've literally helped more people than Johnny Carson ever had. It's a subtle nudge in the morning. Well, thanks, Rich. And as you know, Johnny Carson was one of my idols growing up. Soul Traveler, blue skies in sunny New Jersey, beautiful. Go get yourself an Italian ice on me today. I wish Robert cared about hockey. I love a sports company. Hockey is my favorite, but he's not into it. Okay, so here's the deal with hockey. First of all, apparently hockey fans are really like insane. And if you don't know enough about hockey, they'll let you know about it, right? They will definitely let you know about it. Bill Simmons doesn't even comment on hockey. He grew up watching the Bruins, and he gets raked over the coals with hockey. Here's what I know about hockey. A team from Florida wins too fucking many times in the Stanley Cup. That's what I think. So if you look at the last winners of the Stanley Cup, right? You have the Vegas Knights and these Florida teams. It's like make Canada great again. So I'm pulling for the Edmonton Oilers. I am pulling for the Edmonton Oilers because I like their cool retro jerseys, and Canada needs to fucking win. Okay, they need a win, so I'm all in on the Oilers. By the way, I do have a major hockey connection. One of the Chatarians is connected very closely to a general manager of a hockey team that I cannot mention. So I do have major hockey connections. Nama State of Mind. What's happening? Grand Risings. LMM. Leela, I will get back to you today on our little transaction. There she is, a lovely and talented one. Dr. Joan S. Meow Meow is here. Orlando, Southwest Virginia. I've already had my coffee. Taking the car on time. Somebody go buy a lottery ticket. We should all pull our resources together and buy one of those. I don't know, get 500 lotto tickets. Let's see. Thor at the door. There's my man, Steve. PMSO. Hello, Janine. Good to see you. Okay, so Brandy needs some good vibes. Through your good vibes, you need to be able to inject about 5 IQ points into her mechanic. We can do this. We've got this. Sharon Lewis is here. Hi, Sharon. Finka says my internet's been wonky all morning. All right. Well, hang in there. Vince Duggar coming at us from the Golden Gate, the great Golden Gate. Let's see who else we have here. Scott Jerzik. Hi, Scott. Jeff Rosen checking in from Florida. Justin Zagarella from Georgia. There's our guy. Amy Gill, thank you for the welcome back. Jehudi Mithras, greetings. Kelly B. Joe Wong from Mexico. Scuba Kel. Jackie Delario, New Jersey. I spent the first 4 years of my life in New Jersey. I think it affected my accent for a good period of time. PB, hi PB. Brittany Lay, Harriet Bowie, Lou B, Moira, and NYC. Another great beach day here. Are you getting your lifeguard training at the beach? That's where you get the best lifeguard training. I watch Baywatch. Maybe once. I swear to God, I watched Baywatch one time, and the one Baywatch episode that I watched had Richard Branson on it, and he was fucking flying some parasailer thing, right? Being Richard Branson, and somehow it got kind of messed up, and it crashed in the ocean, and the Baywatch crew had to jump into action and go save Richard Branson. It's the only Baywatch episode I ever watched, and that was enough for me. I refuse to get on the dive bar bathroom wall known as X. Well, I have to say my X feed is pretty good. We got some good people on there. Reassess. They need to be bitch slapped. Ooh, Rich. Man, Rich coming in strong. That liver cleanse, bringing up some chi. How many countermanded their view after being deceived? I don't know. I'm sure there's always some retro repositioning going on. Let's see. Just ignore and listen to Robert. I like listening to Ann O until she starts with politics. That's Ann Ortley. She's a bit blindsided to what's going on, but otherwise, it's a really interesting question, right? Like, can an astrologer have the nuts and bolts to be a good astrologer and be totally whack when it comes to politics and where the world is headed? It's an interesting discussion, and I don't know. I've always been of the mind that if you're really theoretically seeking the truth, that there's no separation of church and state, right? Like you have to go all the way. That's just me. That's just me. Rick Levine lost a lot of credibility with the jab and TDS syndrome because he's good. Again, it's an interesting question, right? Like when some person puts their politics or their personal look. I'm not going to apologize for my stance during that time because there was nobody else. I mean, there were other people. Like, again, I mentioned David, and David, to his credit, was right out in front. And like I said, he took a bigger hit than I did. But it was, to me, that was like a 5 alarm fire going off in my brain. And it was not it was not like I was having a Shakespearean moment, agonizing over what my position was. Like it was real easy. See, that's what happens when you're a splenic projector. You just fucking go. Um, yes, everyone who pushes you should be reassessed, whether they're an astrologer or not. Going to vote now. All right, CN Zuff. Punch one for me. Queen Lisa's here. Rick Levine advocated for the jab. I believe so. Rick. I think Rick was at his best when he was with Jeff. I really like Jeff. They made a good team. I don't think Jeff's politics were any that much different than Rick's, but I thought he was. I like Jeff. Benito Diaz, what's happening? I was up at 1 a.m. last night showing Benito the new opening over on Rumble for 15 minutes of flame. Let's see. I've noticed other astrology channels give reports based on their personal mood lives. David is a prime example. Like, I try to keep my personal life out of this experience. Every now and then it creeps in, right? It just because we're humans, right? Every now and then it creeps in because we're humans. But I don't want to subject you to my trauma or whatever, right? It's like it's not part of it's not that interesting, first of all. It's not that interesting. And if I'm going to work something out, I'm going to work it out sort of behind the scenes, and then I'll be here. Does my bias get in every now and then? And do I go off? Sure, we're human, right? But I try to keep a separation of church and state when it comes to what's going on with me. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Len. I think David took a really big hit, and based on where David was with his his popularity and his subscribers, like that was significant, right? So I will always respect David for putting his truth before his pocketbook when it came to COVID. I will always respect David for that, bar none. Vaporwave says, when I'm home, I'll vote in the poll. I only have Twitter on my laptop. But yes, I'd say they should get their credibility relooked at. I kind of agree. Joe Litke, subscribe. Let's get to 15K. Thank you, Joe. I'd like to get to 50. I'd like to get to 20K before I am 70. That would be great. Yeah, Steve Forrest did advocate to get the vax for sure. Absolutely. I have grown-ups on my show. Well, that's reassuring. I like that, Veronica. It's a pin to my the Twitter poll is pinned to my feed. Let's see who else do we have. You probably gained through David at that time. I know I started following. Well, David and I kind of had this really interesting synergy going on at that time, and we were on each other's shows, and I thought those were some of the best shows that I've done because David was so good, and he has such a quick mind that talking astrology with David is really it's you got to be on your toes, right? And so the back and forth and the sort of leveling up and doubling up on some of those shows was, I thought, really exciting. Um, let's see. Linda Gordon, Steve Forrest was berserkly brainwashed. Well, too bad because some of his work is really good, right? Like I think The Inner Sky is a really good book for beginners with astrologers. Melissa Stanton, howdy, Melissa. Benito says, sounds like they use their influence to seize power over their flocks. False prophet like tyranny. That's interesting. Maybe some of that's true. Here's my take. Okay, my take is that if you really drill down into the quote unquote liberal or progressive or whatever kind of mindset, right, that we're talking about, like they care, like in their minds they care, and that I believe that they thought that pushing the jab was the most compassionate thing that they could do. Right. Like it was the most compassionate thing that they could do because it fit into their kind of rubric of care, right? Which is basically kind of a bastardized form of Christianity that's based on compassion and empathy and charity and loving thy neighbor, right? Which has been weaponized against people, in my opinion, right? So it's kind of in that bucket. But what I, again, and this is, and I'll move on after this and we'll get into something else. But a lot of these people that we're talking about, especially people like Stephen Forrest and Rick Levine, some of the other younger astrologers that were very pro jab, like what's his name? Fuck, Chris Brennan. I always forget his name. Like Chris Brennan was really pro jab, right? But he's not from that generation where Stephen Forrest and Rick Levine are part of that generation, right? So I think he's a millennial, but he was very pro jab as well, right? So, but they're coming at it for I think from different places and different perspectives. But the thing that and we've talked about this before was that people like Levine and Stephen Forrest grew up during a time where questioning the government and questioning corporations and questioning the man was what you did, right? You always questioned authority. If you grew up and you came of age in the 60s, when I say coming of age in the 60s, so if you're like anywhere between, say, I don't know, 16 and 20 during 1967, like you're kind of coming of age in the 60s, especially during that time. And most people were into questioning authority. And I guarantee you, that there's a good chance that those guys were, right? But at some point, they stopped questioning authority and they became the authority. And I think that's a really interesting point to take into consideration as well. Because when you think of somebody like Rick Levine or you think of somebody like Stephen Forrest, they're top of the pyramid when it comes to astrologers. So they became the voice of authority with this. So they became the authority. Now I can't speak to the millennials. I have a whole different take on the millennials. But that to me was to even. I mean, I can like map that out of my brain, but it still blows my mind that a generation. In fact, I have a good friend who was part of that generation and double vaxxed. Now she has gotten all these transfusions, and she has spent literally tens of thousands of dollars, basically flushing her entire system. And I don't know, maybe it's working for her, but same thing, right? She just trusted the authority. Um, Here, I'm gonna put this up with Scott. So many think that the jab did what it was supposed to do. Yeah, unfortunately. Yep. Unfortunately. I stopped listening to someone because he was so anti-Trump, and I don't really like Trump. That's another uh, flashpoint for astrologers, right? Like I've always tried to handle Trump sort of agnostically, because there are things about Trump in his chart that I find interesting, and there are things about Trump in his chart that I find at times quite dangerous, honestly. Right. And from day one with Trump, what was my mantra? You cannot trust him. Okay. You cannot trust him. That was my mantra from day one. That doesn't mean that he was an interesting disruptor, right? With that Sun Uranus conjunction, didn't mean he had the ability to grab the voice of the people with that stellium of Cancer in his 11th house, right? Doesn't mean that he was always going to be engaged in some form of conflict with Mars on his ascendant, right? So there are things where you can look at his chart and go, okay, well, there's this and this and this, right? But, I don't think I ever demonized Trump just because he was Trump or he was a Republican or whatever, right? And at times I thought he was interesting along the ways, and at times he pissed me off. But I tried to be as agnostic as possible when I can. And we all have our biases, right? We all have our biases, except for Peachy. She doesn't have any bias whatsoever. The only bias she has is to get the right cat food in the morning. Isn't that right? Okay, who else do we have here? Elizabeth Heron or Elsbeth. Man, Elsbeth was cooking. She was cooking on our little get together over on Locals. She had a lot of really great things to say. No, it wasn't Locals. I'm sorry. It was Astro Dads. If you haven't checked out Astro Dads, it's a really good episode with me and Ferris. And Elsbeth had some really good insight that she brought to the table. Jay Schaefer from Tucson. What's happening? Scrubbies is here. Hi, Tamara. I reassessed Jesuit educated Rick Tarnas. Now that I know his line is deep state. That's interesting. Richard Tarnas, one of his first books, I thought was pretty good. Somebody actually compared me to him one time. There's a client, and he actually knew Richard Tarnas. Let's see, Jane Adams from Brooklyn. What's up? I love Brooklyn. I got great memories of Brooklyn. All right, Terry Catterley, Sharon Lewis, Brian Scott. Anybody else I left out? Okay, let's get going. Brittany Lay. Did I leave anybody? If I left you out, hey, Bo Kabuki Theater, I apologize. Let's get into the astrology. Let's get into the star of the day, and let's do this. Let's do this. Okay, I don't want that one now, do I? Oh, yes, I want that one. Always check your work when you're doing it after midnight. After midnight, we'll all hang out. After midnight. After midnight. Ooh. I like that song, by the way. By the way, Eric Clapton is you can see Eric Clapton. Here's what's happening with Eric Clapton. I think he knows he's gonna die soon. And he's like, fuck it. I'm going for it. He's like, fuck it. Eric Clapton is now hand in hand with Roger Waters. Let's put it that way. Let's see. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Okay, here we go. Here's our God, we're already at 14 Gemini. God, just amazing. We're halfway through the sign already. I have to admit, I like Gemini energy. It makes me a little feisty though. It has to do with those trines to my Mercury moon. Gets me all talkative and shit. Sun Venus conjunction. It's kind of moving off of Kazemi. A lot of chatter in the air. And it's really, if you look at the sun, we got the square with Saturn going on. By the way, how did people come through this weekend? Did you guys come through okay? Um, we'll leave the personal life out of it. But yeah, so the moon has now moved on. I think that the moon over the weekend, once it passed through Pisces, we had some of that water stuff. By the way, somebody here, let me go back to Twitter. Let me find this. Let me find this tweet here. I had it on my profile, which was pretty cool actually. Here, let me show you this real fast. This has to do with the Astro Weather from last week. Just wanted to let you know how spot on your daily weather hit me yesterday. We've been dealing with water flooding our downstairs and couldn't find the source. Finally, we had an air conditioner tech look at our unit, and he found pent up water that was being blocked in the main line. He said 2 gallons of old water came rushing after the line after it was cleaned. Your exact words yesterday were pent up water. It was a $50 fix on the unit, not thousands like we were expecting. So my husband and I are super grateful. Thank you for the great advice. Every now and then, we kind of hit one, right? We kind of hit one. All right, let's see if we can hit one today. Okay, let me go back in, zoom in a little bit. There we go. All right, so we have the Sun Venus conjunction. It's in the Libran decan and has been for the last 4 days. So there's a lot of communication, a lot of negotiation happening with relationship. And today we have a square with Saturn, and it feels to me like if there is a day where you need to honor your agreements, today is the day. Today is the day. Honor your. Now we got about 4 days worth of, at least with the sun, we got 4 days worth of transits where we get that 14 to 18 exact square. So if you have any commitments or agreements or things that you need to finish up, you have 4 days to do it. 4 days to do it. If you're not done in 4 days, there's a reckoning. Okay, so just get it done. Whatever it is, put your head down, get it done. The Venus square to Saturn, I find to be probably a bit more providential. And I'll tell you why I think the Venus square to Saturn is providential. It's because Saturn is exalted in Libra. It's accidentally exalted in the 7th house. So when you have a Venus Saturn square, even though it's not exalted, it's forcing you as an individual to deal with contracts and agreements. Now, this is you, right, as an individual, what you're going to do. This represents your relationship with the other people that you're supposedly going to do it with. So, honoring contracts and agreements are very, very important. And there's the ability to either gain respect through the honoring of those contracts and agreements, or to kind of fail the test a little bit here and then have to kind of rebuild your credit, right? Maybe this is what we're talking about in terms of COVID in general, because a lot of people failed the test and they have to rebuild their credit. There's not a lot of people that come out. There have been some that have said, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong. And I wonder if anybody in the astrological community would ever do that. I wonder if they would ever do that and say, you know what, I've been right about a lot of stuff, but I'd like to apologize to you in this community that I was wrong here. And I regret taking that stance. And I hope that moving forward, we'll all do a better job. Right. I mean, it feels to me like that's kind of where we are. This is kind of where we are. And when we look at Saturn as an authority, and especially in Pisces, like what does Saturn in Pisces do? It dispenses drugs. That's what Saturn in Pisces does. Pisces is drugs and it's pharmaceuticals. So Fauci is definitely on the fucking hot seat. Now, Fauci is a Capricorn and he's 2 degrees Capricorn. So I'm not sure kind of what's hitting his sun. Maybe it's that Neptune square to his sun that put his sun right about there. There's Neptune coming, probably Neptune squaring his sun. So maybe he's, being revealed right now with all the things that he said. And the thing about Fauci, this is what I'm going to talk about this later on the 15. Fauci has somehow forgotten there's this thing called the internet. Like he's almost like lived in this bubble. There was somebody who I had found this. I don't know where I found this guy, but said that he had worked for Fauci, and he was like this IT guy, and he was working on their computer systems, and this was way back in the day when Fauci was doing the AIDS work, and Deborah Birx worked for him back then. A lot of people don't know that, but she did. And Fauci always left the door of his office open because he wanted to hear what was going on in the other room. He did not want to sequester himself away. And they would have all these meetings, and they basically were being proven that their models were wrong. And Fauci would never say anything during the meetings. Never. He would never commit one way or the other. But he knew basically, where things were going. And then, according to this guy, again, I can't prove any of this, but I just stumbled across this. But according to this guy, Fauci asked him to go back and change some of the data. Yes, he did that. And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't change the data. So then he wound up leaving, and I guess it was quite a lucrative contract job. But he eventually wound up going somewhere else. But he seemed to have not got the memo. There's a thing called the internet. And I don't think that this is going away because we have this Jupiter conjunction with Mercury, and there's a lot of conversation happening. A lot, right? And what's it doing, right? We have this trine with Pluto, and we're getting to the bottom of things. And even with Pluto retrograde, we're going back and looking, and we're digging. Who said what, when, where, and how, right? That's Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. And who's leading the charge? Who is leading the charge? I can tell you who's leading the charge. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene. And do you know what sign she is? I can tell you right now. She is a Gemini, born May 27th, right? So that puts her at about 5 degrees Gemini. And that puts her sun right here. Right here, 5 degrees Gemini. You haven't seen anything yet with Marjorie Taylor Greene. A very polarizing person, but man, she knocked the snot out of Mr. Fauci yesterday. And I'm not a big fan of partisan politics or because I think it's all just a big uniparty, but she's got a pair. She has a pair. And you know what? You don't fuck with a Gemini like that. That's what you don't understand. She's a Gemini. You're going to get into a debate with a Gemini. Good luck, right? So all these Gemini planets, and especially Mercury, within 3 days is going to conjunct her sun. Look out. Look out. And still in trine with Pluto. So Marjorie Taylor Greene getting the benefit here of this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. So today we've got the moon in Taurus conjunct Uranus. And again, we have some nice sextile action going on with Saturn, moon Saturn sextile. Hey, look, today is one of those days where you can be a little eccentric or a little off color or, just looking for, a little something different in the spice of life rack. And it's okay. It's okay. Right. Like today's one of those days where if you're an oddball or you're like, as I mentioned, an eccentric, or you're somebody that cuts against the grain, today's a day where you can stand out and it's okay, right? It's okay. So don't be afraid to fly your freak flag. It's an okay day to fly your freak flag. Because guess what? There's a lot more people that are now starting to have their eyes opened up, right? And the best thing that we can do is to give people permission to go, oh, yeah, I can do that too. I can do, there's this famous video of this guy. All these motivational speakers use it. There's this famous video of this guy. He's like maybe at some kind of a techno thing or groove, and he gets up there and there are people on the lawn. He's got his pants, blue jeans, and no shirt. And he starts doing this goofy fucking dance, right? Just this goofy fucking dance. And then after about 3 minutes or so, this other guy comes in and starts doing this goofy fucking dance. And by the time the video is over, everybody has joined his goofy fucking dance. It's an incredible video. And there's a lot of truth to that video. And all people really need is a sense of permission. And who's going to be the person that gives them the sense of permission? It's the goofy ass motherfucker that's flying his freak flag and say it's okay. Like, it is okay. When I say freak flag, I'm not talking about, like, I'm talking about the freak flag when it comes to truth, right? Because I was on Twitter last night, and there's this guy named Rick Riley who used to write for Sports Illustrated, and he writes a lot of books, and he's written a movie script, and he was making fun of how do I become MAGA, right? And so, unfortunately, this whole thing with MAGA has been lumped into people that question authority or question parts of reality. Well, fuck Rick Riley, right? Don't allow the Rick Rileys of the world to bully you into some form of submission. Do not do it. Do not do it. It's okay, right? And you know that you're not alone. You know that there are other people out there that feel the same way. And thank God we have the internet for now, because it allows us to connect. Today is one of those days. Today is one of those days. You can be eclectic, eccentric, and solid in your position. Now we got this Mars-Pluto square coming in hot here, right? And especially when it goes and hits those early degrees of Taurus, and at the end of Aries, it's kind of like, okay, let's get the most bang for our buck as possible. I don't know if you saw that there was this major riot that broke out yesterday in Philadelphia at one of the Pride parades. Quite frankly, had a little post on this. And my commentary was that if you looked at the riot, this is, the media will not tell you this, but most of the people that were wreaking havoc and delivering violence on the Pride parade were black. Right? They're black. And why? Why is this happening? Well, first of all, the quote unquote black male has never been very fond of the gay community, and they have often been accused of being homophobic, and there's a lot of slander against sort of the black male in that community. The other part is that as a group that has been aggrieved, the LGBTQ seems to have leapfrogged over the black community. And now they're looking at them and go, well, we don't like that. Right? Like, our struggle was based on our skin color. And what happened many years ago, like you're these Johnny come latelys, and all of a sudden now you're getting all this political shine. And quite frankly, we don't like it. Right. And I really feel like that's kind of at the root of this Mars-Pluto square going on. And I just don't think that Pride Month is going to go well. I don't think it's going to go well. It's going to be, I think, on record, one of the worst Pride Months in history. I think now, some people have said, well, there's going to be a false flag and they're going to blame it on white nationalists or whatever. Well, there's already, like, boots on the ground evidence out there on the table that there's been violence at one of these get-togethers and had nothing to do with that so-called demographic. I don't think Pride Month is going to do very well, right? I feel like it's kind of jumped the shark, and we're going to see that with that Mars-Pluto square. The other thing here is, you got to pay attention. There's like talk of 67 financial institutions that are about to fail. We got Mars coming in with Taurus, squaring off against Pluto, which is all about assets and resources. That's coming, right? That's coming. So prepare accordingly. Okay. That's your Astro Weather. All right. I got to zoom through this because I got another show to do. I talked too long today. All right. Let me do this. Zoom out. Now I'm going to skip the banner because I'm kind of behind time here. But we all know this is for True Hemp Science, my buddy Chris. And all you got to do is type in 15MINS and you will get a free goodie bag with any purchase over $100 more. Please go to his website. Check out all the fine CBD products. And if you need to make an appointment with Chris, you can do so right there. Your True Hemp Science star of the day is Dr. Ruth. Now, I was a little shocked when I started to read about Dr. Ruth's background. Okay, let's just get into the chart. First of all, she's a double Gemini, right? Double Gemini, and she's born on a lunar eclipse. But not just any lunar eclipse, like it's a lunar Saturn eclipse. And it's all in the seventh house, which is what? Relationships. And she becomes this fucking sex guru. Now, she's got kind of a weird background. She was trained as a sniper and a scout. She's about 4'7". So she was in the IDF, right? So you have this Mars and Aries, in the 12th house. So to me, Mars and Aries in the 12th house is definitely scout sniper material. So she was Dr. Ruth. Dr. Ruth's a hardcore Zionist, okay? Makes no bones about it. And I think she's got some interesting, maybe not so interesting, but she has some weird kind of opinions on kink, right? She has that Mars-Uranus conjunction. Mars is sex and sex energy, right? And she has it in Aries, so it's all taboo in the 12th house. And because it's conjunct Vesta, she's doing this later in life. I mean, literally, I think about the age 55, she pops out of nowhere and becomes this expert. She starts on local radio in New York, and within 6 months, she's syndicated. You have to ask yourself, why? Right? I have that question. Why? Is Dr. Ruth kind of a plant? And after reading her background, even with her very cute little personality, I would say yes. She's a total plant. But if you look at her chart, she's got sun, she's got that eclipse, man. She's born on an eclipse. And it's with Saturn. So she's got Venus, true node, the sun, double Gemini, first house, chatty, right? She's Miss Chatty. And she was into just about anything with the exception of, I think, pedophilia. Like, if you wanted to do an animal in the privacy of your own home with another adult, Dr. Ruth was all good. If you wanted to have a fantasy about being banged by the entire football team, Dr. Ruth was, it's all good. Grand Trine, Jupiter, 29 degrees Aries, Neptune, 28 degrees Leo, and then finally that moon just sneaking in over here at 19 degrees Aries Grand Fire Trine. So still alive. She's got a lot of energy. Mercury Pluto, second house. She talks about the taboo with Mercury Pluto conjunction. That's what she does. Sextiling Jupiter, and she goes from a small voice to a very big voice and national acclaim, international acclaim. Not a lot of earth in her chart. So she's not real grounded. But boy, can she talk. Now, what I found fascinating is that Dr. Ruth did this video. I got to show it to you. 10 Secrets for Greater Sensual Pleasure with Dr. Ruth Westheimer. And I thought to myself, when I think of secrets for greater sensual pleasure, Dr. Ruth is my go-to. She's top of mind. She has a series of videos for Playboy about this. That should tell you just about everything. So Dr. Ruth, I think she's a bit of a plant. That's my own. That's just my own observations here. I think she comes out of nowhere and she promotes the sexual revolution. Right? That's what she does. She's a huge proponent of abortion as a birth control method. Like I've looked into this, right? She's done a ton of work for Planned Parenthood, right? She is in a lot of ways, she's like, kind of the radio version of the Frankfurt School. Now, to her credit, she did espouse monogamy. To her credit, Saturn in the seventh house, espousing monogamy. But Dr. Ruth, there's a lot more that meets the eye with Dr. Ruth. I can tell you that right now. But she was incredibly successful, made a shit ton of money off of her program, basically telling people to get off any which way they could. There's your True Hemp Science star of the day, Dr. Ruth Westheimer, an avowed Zionist and former member of the IDF. All right, I got to get out of here. The link for 15 minutes is in the show notes, and I hope to see as many of you over there as possible. I am simulcasting on Rumble as well. So if you don't want to be a part of the Boxcast experience, just go on over to Rumble, and same thing is happening there live. Okay? All right, take care, everybody. Love to all of you. See you guys tomorrow morning. Bye for now.